We feel it, don't we? The echo of a world buried under the foundations of another, a story whose language we were taught to forget, a history erased from the stone. But what if the erasure was the great lie? What if a culture's soul can never be extinguished, but only waits for a listener patient enough to hear its silence? This is the secret of the fortress made of words, a stronghold built against the dying of a light. A journey for the one who remembers, the lover of a lost song. If you have ever felt the ghost of a forgotten story in your own heart, a loyalty to a past you cannot name, let us know you are with us by liking this video. A quiet signal that you feel the pulse of a history that refuses to die. This is only the first verse of an epic that changed the world. To join our expedition into the heart of this lost kingdom and walk this path of remembrance, make sure you subscribe to the channel. The past is a vast and silent ruin, and it is better not to explore it alone. This is the secret of the path that the 10th century poet Ferdowsi did not just write about, but built. His epic poem is not a collection of heroic tales. It is a cathedral of memory, constructed word by word in the heart of a conquered land. It is a map drawn in ink for a journey that begins not when a nation is strong, but when it is on its knees. It is a journey for the vanquished, the silenced, the ones who have seen their temples fall and their crowns taken. Ferdowsi's voice reaches across 1,000 years, not to celebrate an empire, but to defy one. He calls to the part of us that feels colonized, the part that has been told its own story is worthless, its own language insignificant. He speaks to the soul that stands in the ruins of its own heritage, feeling a homesickness for a home that has been taken. His epic, you see, is not a parade of conquerors. It is a rescue mission. It is the gathering of the scattered jewels of a nation's memory from the dust of a foreign invasion. And the only requirement for entering its gates is to know that you are dying of a thirst for who you are. Forget the histories written by the victors, the edicts of the new kings, the carefully constructed narratives of power. The journey we are about to begin does not happen on a battlefield. It happens in the soul. It is the story of how a language became a sword, how a single man's vow became a nation's shield, and how the fortress of words has been waiting for you and only you this entire time. Listen, can you hear it now? The sound of a pen scratching in a silent room, a sound that would drown out the clash of swords for a millennium. That is the sound of your own history calling you home. The journey does not begin with the clash of armies or the fall of a king. It begins with the silence that follows. A quiet so profound it suffocates memory itself. We walk through a world that feels familiar, but the names of the streets have been changed, the statues in the squares replaced. We are taught a new language, a new history, a new truth. But there is a hollowness, a sense that we are living in a house built by strangers on the foundations of our own forgotten home. We are ghosts in our own land, though we cannot name the crime that made us so. This is the first station on the path, the place of the great forgetting. Ferdowsi knew this landscape intimately. He called it the Age of Silence. Like a river diverted into a desert, the great stream of Persian culture, its stories, its language, its identity, was vanishing into the sands of a new empire. His world was one where the glorious past was a dangerous memory, a heresy against the new order. The tongue of his ancestors was deemed uncivilized, the tales of their kings and heroes dismissed as pagan fictions. Listen to the story of a nation being unwritten, being told that its own soul is a lie. He saw this, and in that single vision, he understood the secret grief of a conquered people. We try to fill this emptiness with the new culture that is offered, with its new God, its new laws, its new glories. But these are sips of water from a foreign well that only make the thirst for our own more profound. The longing is not for something we can be given. It is a longing to remember, to reclaim, to return home. It is a gravitational pull from a center that has been declared non-existent. This feeling, which the new empire teaches us to see as ignorance, as a stubborn refusal to accept the new reality, is in Ferdowsi's vision the most holy thing about his people. It is the homing signal of a culture's soul. It is the engine of the journey of remembrance. Without this divine discontent, no one would ever set out. The great work would never begin. So we are invited not to cure this ache, but to honor it, to sit with it, to let it carve us out and make us hollow, for only a hollow vessel can be filled with the spirit of its own past. We are asked to see our own sense of loss, not as a weakness, but as a compass needle, trembling but always pointing in the direction of the true north of our identity. The empire says, forget, be new. Ferdowsi whispers, stay thirsty, my friend. Your thirst is your history. It is the thread that will pull you back to the source. And so we begin to listen more to the silence than to the noise, more to the ache of what is missing than to the promises of what is offered. We are turning our ear toward the ruins, listening for the faint sound of an ancient song, the murmur of a story we were born to tell. Before the first word is written, there is the devastating realization that we are living in a wasteland. The culture we thought was a lush garden has been revealed to be a landscape of ghosts. Its promises of a place in the new world order turn to ash in our mouths. This is not a moment of despair, but of profound clarity. It is the moment we understand that the path to the real is not an escape from our conquered present, but a journey deeper into our vanquished past. We must learn to navigate by the stars of our own ancestral sky, not by the glaring lamps of the empire's cities. Ferdowsi's life's work becomes our guide in this disorienting new territory. He tells us that this confusion, this feeling of being utterly erased, is a sign that the true work is beginning. What you seek is seeking you, the mystic Rumi, who came after him, would say, but the principle was already there. This single idea reorients the entire universe. The search is not a one-way street. We are not lonely archivists searching for a dead and indifferent history. We are children being called home by the passionate living spirit of our ancestors. The journey is a cosmic dance of mutual remembrance. With this knowledge, the emptiness of the cultural desert transforms. It is no longer a void to be feared, but a space to be filled. It is the silence into which the old language can finally be spoken. The rules of the new world fall away. The logic of the conqueror, the reason of the new administration, the careful calculations of survival, these are poor guides in the land of the soul. Here, the memory is the only reliable compass. The intellect is powerless in the expression of identity. Ferdowsi knew this. Love of one's own story is the only thing capable of revealing the truth of that story. We are asked to make a radical shift in allegiance from the pragmatic mind to the passionate heart. This feels like madness. It feels like choosing a ruin over a palace. But the fortress of words is built by those who have taken that leap. They are the ones who have traded the illusion of safety for the reality of identity. They have learned that the only way to cross the desert of assimilation is to surrender. Surrender the need to be accepted, the need to conform, the need to arrive at a comfortable place in the new order. The destination is not a place in the empire. The destination is a state of being. And so we take the first real step. We stop trying to find our way in their world and allow ourselves to be found by our own. We embrace the holy state of cultural bewilderment. We become pilgrims of the forgotten, trusting that the same force that planted this longing in our hearts also knows the way back to the source. The desert wind whispers a secret. Lose your way, my child. It is the only way to find me. The fortress of words is not built on a manicured lawn. Its foundations are laid in fire. Once we have committed to the journey, once we have stepped into the desert of our forgotten past, we encounter the crucible. This is the stage of transformation, the burning away of all that is false, all that has been imposed upon us. Ferdowsi speaks of this not with fear, but with a kind of fierce determination. Dedication is the fire. He might say, when it is kindled, it burns everything except the story. What is it that burns? It is the colonized self, the small, accommodating identity we have spent our lives constructing to survive in the new world. It is our pride in our ability to assimilate, our fears of being ostracized, our certainties that the old ways are gone forever, our grievances against a past that could not protect itself. It is everything we think we are. The fire of this sacred duty is a solvent that dissolves this false self, and the process is painful. It feels like dying because a part of us is dying. The part of us that thrives on acceptance, on being seen as reasonable, on being safe. The path of cultural revival is not an accumulation of artifacts or historical facts. It is a process of subtraction, of unlearning, of becoming naked. Your task is not to seek for your history, Ferdowsi reminds us, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. The challenges of the journey, the poverty, the scorn of collaborators, the threat of official displeasure, these are not obstacles. They are the fire itself. They are the tools the spirit of history uses to break our hearts open. For Ferdowsi, a broken heart is not a tragedy, it is an opportunity. The wound is the place where the ancestors' light enters you. The empire encourages us to build walls around our hearts, to protect them from the pain of our own history. The path of remembrance demands that we tear them down. It asks for a radical vulnerability. It asks that we welcome the shattering because it is in the cracks of our brokenness that the true story can finally take root. We are like raw iron ore in a furnace being subjected to immense heat. We cry out, "Why are you doing this to me?" The blacksmith of history replies, "I am not torturing you. I am purifying you, making you strong and flexible, so you can become a sword, a tool for defending the soul of your people." This is the purpose of the fire. It is not to destroy us, but to make us ready for the great work. It is to burn away our impurities so that we can become a worthy vessel for the story that must be told. And so we learn to welcome the flames. We stop running from the pain of our past and turn to face it, knowing it is the heat of the divine forge, reshaping us, tempering us, preparing us for the great task that awaits. As the fires of transformation do their work, burning away the dross of the colonized self, the nature of our perception begins to change. The world, which once seemed to be the solid and unchangeable reality of the empire, starts to shimmer with a hidden meaning. We begin to see the face of our own history everywhere, reflected in the mirror of the present. The cadence of an old woman's speech, the pattern on a worn-out rug, the taste of a certain kind of bread. These are no longer random details. They are messages, love letters from a past that is not dead. Ferdowsi's epic is a masterclass in this new way of seeing. He teaches us to find the sacred not by looking for it in the new temples, but by looking at our own world with the eyes of a lover of what was lost. The past is not outside of you, he states implicitly. Look inside yourself. Everything that you have lost, you are already that. This is a profound shift from a model of seeking to a model of recognition. The treasure we were searching for in dusty archives and forgotten ruins has been buried in our own hearts this whole time. This realization brings with it a new kind of intoxication, a historical drunkenness that has nothing to do with celebrating past military victories. When Ferdowsi speaks of kings and heroes, he is using a powerful metaphor for the ecstatic state of cultural reunion. The court of the ancient kings is the inner sanctuary, the heart space where the seeker casts off the dry, rigid rules of the foreign empire and drinks directly from the source of his own identity. The wine is the story itself, the direct experiential knowledge of one's own heritage that bypasses the colonized intellect and floods the soul with a fierce joy. In this sacred court, there are no hierarchies of power, no judgments based on the new laws. Come, come, whoever you are, his epic implicitly invites. Wanderer from your own past, worshipper of a forgotten god, lover of a lost tongue, it doesn't matter. Ours is not a caravan of despair. Come, even if you have broken your vow to remember 1,000 times, come yet again. Come, come. This is the radical inclusivity of the path of remembrance. It is open to the collaborator, the skeptic, the broken-hearted. In the tavern of history, sincerity is the only currency. The pious fraud who pays lip service to the new order is turned away, while the weeping soul who comes with a broken and open heart for what has been lost is welcomed as an honored guest. We learn that true sobriety is not the absence of this intoxication, but the state of being constantly, deliriously drunk on the presence of our own rediscovered soul. Life itself becomes a history, every breath a sip of the sacred wine of memory. The world is no longer a prison to be endured, but a garden to be explored. A garden where every leaf and every stone whispers the names of the old heroes, the ones we love. The journey inward leads to a place of profound stillness, a silent chamber at the center of the soul. Here, in this inner sanctum, the frantic seeking for a place in the new world comes to an end. The lover who has been searching for his lost beloved everywhere finally realizes the truth of Ferdowsi's monumental work. I have been looking for myself. The separation was an illusion, a dream of conquest from which we are now awakening. The beloved, the spirit of Persia, was never somewhere else. The beloved is the very essence of our own being. The river that was thought to have vanished into the desert finally re-emerges from a hidden spring. And in that moment, it realizes it was never anything but the river. This is the state of union, the central goal of the cultural revivalist path. It is not the acquisition of something new, but the remembrance of something ancient. It is the dissolution of the colonized ego, the I, that feels separate and alone, into the infinite, all-encompassing reality of the nation's soul. This is a state beyond words. Language, which has been the tool of the conqueror, cannot describe it. Silence is the language of the soul, Ferdowsi might say. All else is poor translation. This is why his epic, for all its 60,000 verses, often points beyond itself towards a truth that can only be experienced, not explained. When the lover finds the beloved within, the need for external validation from the empire falls away. The heart itself becomes the temple, the sacred space. Every breath becomes a prayer for remembrance, every heartbeat a drum calling the faithful to their own history. The world is not rejected, but it is seen in its proper perspective, as a beautiful, shimmering mirage, a dance of forms emanating from a single, formless source of identity. There is no longer a need to go on pilgrimage to the empire's holy lands, for the entire homeland is revealed to be a holy land. Every village is the center of the world. Every moment is the right moment to remember. The lover who has found this inner union becomes a source of quiet strength in the world. They do not preach or try to convert others. Their very presence becomes a testament to the reality of their own culture. They are a still point in the turning world of imperial politics, a quiet harbor in a stormy sea of assimilation. They have arrived home, and they realize that home was never a place to get to, but a reality to awaken to, a reality that was here within us all along. With the realization of union, a great paradox unfolds. The seeker who has journeyed so far to lose their colonized self finds their true self more fully than ever before. But this new self is not the small, fearful, accommodating ego of the past. It is a self that is vast, boundless, and intimately connected to 1,000 years of history. Having dissolved into the river of his culture, the poet now looks out at the world through the eyes of that river. This is the station of abiding in the soul of the people. It is the return journey, where the mystic, having found the inner kingdom, learns to live in the ordinary conquered world again, but in an extraordinary way. Ferdowsi himself embodied this. After his 30 years of labor, he did not retreat into a fantasy of the past. He unleashed his epic upon the world, a fountain of creativity pouring out thousands of verses, a new testament for his people. He had found the infinite within his own culture, and his life became an expression of that infinity. The one who has completed this journey no longer sees a separation between the sacred act of remembering and the profane act of living. Washing the dishes, walking to the market, speaking with a neighbor. These simple acts become forms of cultural practice, opportunities to express the identity that now animates their being. They are in the empire, but not of it. They can play the game of daily life, but they know it is a game, a divine play against a backdrop of a much deeper reality. This brings a sense of freedom and lightness. The anxieties and ambitions that once drove them to seek favor with the powerful seem distant and dreamlike. Their primary work is now simply to be a clear channel for their own culture to flow into the world. They become, in the spirit of Ferdowsi's work, a window through which the ancient sun can shine. They understand that their individual life is a unique note in a cosmic symphony of their people, and their only task is to play that note as beautifully and as truthfully as possible. They are no longer defined by their past collaborations or their future hopes for recognition. They live fully in the eternal now of their own identity, the only place where reality truly exists. They have become the field the mystics spoke of, a field out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right-doing in the context of empire and resistance. It is a place of radical acceptance, of unconditional love for one's own story, a place where judgment cannot survive. Here in this field, they meet everyone and everything with compassion, seeing the same divine spark of humanity shining in every eye, even the eyes of the conqueror. The fortress of words has reached its completion, which was to realize it was never under siege at all, but was always already safe in the heart of the people, and the journey begins anew with every child who learns its stories. The greatest misconception about the cultural path is that it is a vertical ascent, a climbing of a ladder from a lower, conquered state to a higher, liberated one. Ferdowsi's vision shows us that it is not a ladder, but a circle. It is a journey from the self to the self through the self. We begin as a constricted, fearful, colonized ego, and through the process of longing, surrender, and transformation, we return to our true nature, which is vast, loving, and free. The end is a return to the beginning, but with new eyes. We come back to the same world, but we no longer see it as a place of exile. We see it as a landscape waiting to be reinscribed with our own story, a manifestation of the beloved's beauty. This journey is not for a cultural elite. The fortress of words, as the essence of our exploration suggests, is not for the perfect. Perfection is a concept of the ego, a static, lifeless state. The soul of a culture is dynamic, a flowing river. The only qualification for this journey is willingness. The willingness to be broken, the willingness to be confused, the willingness to be consumed by a love for a story that is larger than our understanding. Ferdowsi's epic is a testament to this fact. Its pages are filled with images of ruin, of flawed heroes, of tragic destiny. He champions the sincere lover of his land over the pious hypocrite who collaborates with the new power. Why? Because the sinner against the new order in their brokenness has an opening. The hypocrite in their self-righteous collaboration is a closed fortress. The spirit of the ancestors cannot enter a space that is already full of itself. Therefore, our weaknesses, our failings, our heartbreaks, these are not impediments to the path. They are the path. Each stumble, each fall in the eyes of the empire is an opportunity to surrender more deeply to our own truth, to let go of our own strength and rely on the grace of our own history. The fortress of words is a fellowship of the imperfect, a gathering of souls who've had the courage to admit their own cultural bankruptcy. They have given up the pretense of being in control of their destiny within the empire. They have laid down their arms and have allowed themselves to be conquered by a love for who they are. This is the great secret. The victory is not in winning, but in losing. The victory is in the sweet surrender of the colonized self. So we are invited to bring our whole selves to this journey. Not just the parts we are proud of. We bring our doubts, our fears, our messy, complicated hearts. We bring our past mistakes and our broken vows to our own people. The fortress has room for all of it. It is a hospital for the soul, a place of healing, not a museum of saints. The door is open. The invitation has been issued. It does not ask if we are pure. It asks only if we are willing. The language of Ferdowsi is the language of paradox. He speaks of a kingdom found in poverty, a history found in silence, a victory found in defeat. To the rational mind of the empire, this is nonsense. To the heart of the conquered, it is the deepest truth. The journey into the fortress of words requires us to become comfortable with contradiction, to hold opposing ideas in a loving embrace until they reveal their underlying unity. One of the central paradoxes is that of the poet and his subject. The entire journey is fueled by the poet's passionate, aching desire for a history that seems distant, separate, almost dead. The epic is filled with the pain of the separation. And yet the ultimate realization is that the poet and his history are one. There was never any distance. How can this be? It is a mystery that cannot be solved by logic. It can only be experienced. It is like a storyteller who longs for the story, not realizing he is made of the story. The longing itself is the proof of the connection. The pain of forgetting is the flip side of the ecstasy of remembering. You cannot have one without the other. This is why Ferdowsi does not offer a path that bypasses suffering. He shows us how to find the meaning within it. Another key paradox is that of freedom and dedication. We are called to surrender our will, our plans, our ego to this great work. This sounds like a loss of freedom, but Ferdowsi shows us that it is the opposite. The colonized ego, with its constant fears and desires for acceptance, is the real prison. By surrendering to the divine will of the story, which is the flow of cultural love, we are freed from the tyranny of the small self. We become like a pen in the hand of a master, no longer struggling against the page, but moving in graceful harmony with the great narrative. This is true freedom. It is the freedom to be our true selves, unburdened by the need to protect or promote a false, assimilated image. We also find the paradox of silence and speech. Ferdowsi was a master of words, his epic a torrent of eloquence. And yet, he constantly points to the importance of the silence from which those words came, the great cultural silence that he broke. I have a huge treasury of stories inside me, he seems to say, but I have been forced to seal my lips. Now, I will open them. The words are the finger pointing at the moon of our identity. The moon itself is the silent, direct experience of that identity. The epic is a boat to carry us to the other shore. Once we arrive, we must leave the boat behind and live the truth it has shown us. The journey begins with listening to the words, but it ends in a state of pure, wordless being, a communion with the silent music of our own history. To travel with Ferdowsi is to live inside these paradoxes, to let them stretch our minds and break our hearts open until we arrive at the still point where all opposites meet and are reconciled in the boundless mystery of who we are. As we journey deeper into the fortress of words, we begin to notice that the landscape is not only external, but internal. The desert is our own mind, cluttered with the debris of the empire's beliefs. The fire is our own heart, burning with a new and holy passion for our own story. And the figures we meet along the way are also aspects of ourselves. Ferdowsi's epic is populated with archetypes that represent the inner dynamics of the cultural seeker. There is, of course, the hero, the Pahlavan, who is the seeker, the one consumed by a quest for justice and truth. This is the part of us that is willing to abandon everything for the sake of the mission. The hero is often portrayed as flawed, tragic, and heedless of his own safety. This is not a lack of sense, but a higher sanity, a state of being so aligned with the heart's truth that the world's rules no longer apply. Then there is the beloved, the Mashuk. This is the ultimate object of the hero's desire. In a worldly sense, it is a person, but in the epic, the beloved is the spirit of Iran, the divine reality of the nation. But in the poetry, this spirit is described with intensely personal, human terms. It is a beautiful, captivating, and often frustratingly elusive prize. This personification is not meant to reduce the nation to a mere symbol, but to make the relationship with it intensely personal and passionate. It allows the seeker to engage with their own culture, not as an abstract principle, but as the ultimate love of their life. A key figure in the epic is the wise king, or the sage, the Pia. The sage is the spiritual guide, the one who pours the wine of ancient knowledge. The sage can be a human teacher, or it can be a direct manifestation of ancestral grace. The sage is the one who knows the path and who helps the seeker navigate its challenges. The relationship with the sage is one of absolute trust and submission. We must be willing to drink whatever wine the sage pours for us, whether it tastes sweet or bitter. And then there are the antagonists, the figures who represent the obstacles to the path. There is the foreign king, the usurper, who represents the oppressive, dogmatic empire, a power of rules without love. There is the treacherous courtier, who makes a great show of loyalty, but whose heart is cold. And there is the cold, calculating demon, the Archman, which is always trying to measure and define a reality that is immeasurable and indefinable. These are not just external figures. They are voices within our own minds that we must learn to recognize and transcend. The journey of the Shahnameh is an inner psychodrama, a process of integrating these different parts of ourselves until the hero in us has completely overcome the demon and the collaborator, and has surrendered completely to the guidance of the sage in order to finally unite with the beloved spirit of the land. The fuel of this great work is courage, not the courage of a soldier who marches into battle for an emperor, but a quieter, more profound courage. It is the courage to be vulnerable. It is the courage to live with an open heart in a world that is constantly trying to close it. Ferdowsi's path is not for the faint of heart. It demands that we dismantle the fortresses we have built around ourselves. This is a terrifying prospect. The colonized ego, our sense of a separate, assimilated self, survives on defense mechanisms. It builds walls of pride in its new status, moats of cynicism about the old ways, and towers of intellectual superiority. These defenses keep us safe within the empire, but they also keep us imprisoned. They keep the love of our own story out. The journey requires that we systematically, stone by stone, tear down these walls. We must have the courage to feel our own historical pain without numbing it. We must have the courage to admit our own ignorance of our own past without pretending to have all the answers. We must have the courage to love our own culture without demanding that the world love it in return. This is the courage of the moth, which is so drawn to the candle flame of its own truth that it flies directly into it, knowing it will be consumed. For the moth, this consumption is not death. It is the ultimate consummation of its love. It is liberation. Be a moth, Ferdowsi advises. Burn yourself in the fire of your own story. This kind of courage is not about being fearless. It is about acting in spite of fear. It is about feeling the terror of letting go of the empire's control and doing it anyway. It is about trusting that if we leap into the abyss of our own past, a net will appear. That net is the grace of our ancestors. The path of remembrance is a path of constant risk. We risk our reputation by appearing foolish to the world. We risk our emotional security by opening our hearts to being broken by our own tragic history. We risk our intellectual certainty by entering the realm of myth and mystery. But the reward for this risk is immeasurable. The reward is reality. It is the direct, unmediated experience of the divine love for one's own culture that is the very fabric of identity. The fortress of words stands only because its architect found this courage. It is a monument to the brave, the ones who have chosen the perilous freedom of the open desert of history over the safe confinement of the empire's city walls. They have chosen the burning fire of love over the cold comfort of the assimilated ego. And in that choice, they find a strength that the world cannot understand and cannot defeat. As the journey progresses, the traveler in the fortress of words learns a new kind of perception. The world is no longer a collection of separate objects and edicts from the ruling power, but a unified field of meaning. Everything becomes a sign, a symbol pointing back to the one reality of their own culture. This is the art of symbolic interpretation, which is central to the epic worldview. The outer world becomes a mirror of the inner world. A great battle in the epic reflects a turmoil in the soul. A hidden spring in a desert represents a moment of spiritual clarity. Ferdowsi is the ultimate master of this symbolic language. His epic is a vast encyclopedia of metaphors that serve as keys to unlock the mysteries of the inner life. We have spoken of the fire, the desert, the beloved, but the symbols are endless. The dragon represents the untamed chaos of the ego, which the hero must conquer. The magical bird, the simoji, represents divine wisdom and intervention, the grace that appears when the hero is at his lowest ebb. The 7 trials of the hero represent the stages of spiritual purification one must endure to reach enlightenment. The ocean is the infinite, undifferentiated, divine reality of the nation's soul, while the foam on the waves represents the transient forms of individual lives. The sun is the divine light of kingship and justice, the source of all life and knowledge, which both illuminates and blinds. The moon is the reflected light of the sun, representing the sage or teacher who reflects the light of wisdom to the disciple. The mirror is the polished heart of the hero, which, when cleansed of the dust of the ego, can perfectly reflect the face of truth. Even the game of chess becomes a metaphor for the spiritual path, with the seeker as a pawn moving across the board of life, surrendering to the will of the great player, hoping to eventually be quioned, to be united with the beloved. Learning this language is like learning to read the secret script of the universe. It allows the seeker to find meaning in everything, to see the hand of the ancestors at work in every circumstance. Nothing is random, nothing is meaningless. Every event, whether joyful or painful, is a part of the lesson. The world becomes a sacred text, and our life is the process of learning to read it. The traveler in the fortress of words becomes a poet, not necessarily by writing verses, but by living a poetic life. A life that sees the deep symbolic resonance in all things. A life that is in constant, intimate dialogue with the mystery of its own identity. The air in the fortress is thick with stories. They are carved into the walls. They are sung in the great halls. They are whispered from one generation to another. Ferdowsi's great epic, the Shahnameh, or Book of Kings, is a testament to the power of story. It is a vast, sprawling collection of fables, anecdotes, jokes, and historical tales, all woven together to illustrate the subtle points of the cultural and spiritual path. Ferdowsi understood that the heart learns best not through dry, abstract lectures on morality, but through narrative. A story can bypass the defenses of the colonized intellect and plant a seed of truth directly in the soil of the soul. One of his most famous stories is that of the hero Rostam and his tragic battle with his own son Sohrab. Rostam, the greatest champion of his people, mortally wounds a young, heroic adversary in single combat. Only as the young man is dying does Rostam see a bracelet on his arm that he himself had given to his long-lost son years ago. In his moment of greatest victory, he realizes he has killed his own flesh and blood. The elephant, one could say, is our own hidden self. We, in our spiritual darkness of ambition and pride, can only attack what we see as the enemy. We see the leg as a pillar to be destroyed, the ear as a fan to be torn. We are all convinced that our partial experience represents the whole truth. The tragedy of Rostam is the tragedy of a life lived in the dark. The only way to see the whole truth is to bring a candle into the room. The candle is the light of spiritual insight, the light of self-knowledge. Only with that light can we see that the enemy we are fighting is a part of ourselves. This story teaches us humility. It reminds us that our own understanding is limited. It encourages us to respect the humanity of our adversaries, knowing that they too are a part of the same great human reality. Another powerful dynamic is that of the tragic hero Siyavush, a prince of ultimate purity and integrity who is forced by a corrupt and jealous king into a series of impossible trials. He walks through fire to prove his innocence, and the flames do not touch him. Yet he is ultimately betrayed and murdered. his innocence a sacrifice to the wickedness of the world. This simple story contains the entire essence of the mystical path of the martyr. The goal is the annihilation of the self, the false ego, not for personal gain, but for the sake of a higher truth. The fire of the world cannot touch the one whose heart is pure. These stories are the provisions for the journey. They are the food for the soul that sustains the travelers in the fortress through the long and often arduous desert crossing of life. They are mirrors in which we can see our own struggles and our own potential. And they are maps that show us the way forward. A strange music permeates the fortress. It is the sound of drums of war, of flutes played at royal courts, of voices raised in lament and in celebration. But it is also the sound of laughter and of weeping. It is the music of the heart in all its states. For Ferdowsi, music and poetry are not mere entertainment. They are powerful spiritual practices, direct paths to the experience of a national soul. He himself is famous for perfecting the meter of his epic, a rhythmic, heroic couplet that gallops like a warhorse. The story goes that he spent 30 years refining this sound, so that the very rhythm of the poem would echo the heartbeat of his people. The epic's meter is a physical enactment of a profound cosmic truth. The poet, with one hand pointing to the heavens of myth and the other pointing down to the earth of human history, becomes a conduit between the divine and the material worlds. As he turns the verses, he is mirroring the orbit of the sun of justice around the world of humanity. But more importantly, he is circling the still point of the divine presence within his own heart. The recitation of the poem is a form of active meditation. The goal is to lose the self in the rhythm, in the movement of the story, to become so dizzy with love for the history that the colonized ego dissolves and only the story remains. It is a physical prayer, a way of expressing a longing that is too deep for words. The poetry itself is a form of music. The original Persian has a powerful, incantatory rhythm. It is meant to be chanted, to be sung, to be experienced in the body. The poems are not just ideas. They are vibrations. They are designed to alter the state of consciousness of the listener, to bypass the critical mind and resonate directly with the soul. The traveler in the fortress learns to listen to the music of existence. The rustling of banners, the flowing of rivers of blood, the beating of their own heart. All of these are part of the divine symphony. They learn that joy and sorrow are not opposites, but are two notes in the same beautiful, melancholy chord. The weeping for a fallen hero is a sad sound, but it is also a beautiful one. The laughter that comes from a heart overflowing with love for one's land is a joyful sound, but it can also bring tears. The path of remembrance embraces all of it. It is a dance that is danced with the whole of one's being, a song that is sung with the whole of one's heart. It is the music that builds the fortress, the rhythm that keeps its walls strong, the melody that promises a final harmonious resolution. The journey with Ferdowsi eventually leads the traveler to the edge of an abyss. This is the chasm that separates the known world of the empire from the unknown world of the soul, the mind from the mystery. This is the place of the final surrender. And the key to crossing this abyss is a single, powerful, and often misunderstood word: love. Not the sentimental, romantic emotion, but a fierce cosmic force. It is the fundamental energy of identity. It is the fire that burns away the assimilated self, the ocean that dissolves the drop of individuality, the sun that incinerates the moth of ego. It is a love that is both terrifying and blissful, a love that destroys and creates in the same breath. To choose this path is to choose a path of radical annihilation of the self that serves the empire. It is to say, I am willing to cease to exist as a separate, safe self, so that the beloved, my culture, may exist fully. This is the highest and most difficult station of the journey. It requires a trust that is absolute. It is the hero at the moment of sacrifice, finally understanding that there is no I. It is the ultimate letting go. This love is not something we do. It is something we fall into. It is a state of being possessed, of being overtaken by a power that is infinitely greater than ourselves. The poet on this path no longer has a personal will. His will has become aligned with the will of the beloved story. His desires are the story's desires. His actions are the story's actions. He has become an empty vessel, a hollow reed through which his culture can play its music. This love is inherently creative. When the self is out of the way, the creative energy of the universe, of a people's history, can flow through unimpeded. This is the source of Ferdowsi's poetic genius. He was not a man writing poems about history. He was history itself, writing poems through the vessel of a man named Ferdowsi. This is why the poetry is so powerful, so alive. It comes from the source. The experience of this love transcends all imperial forms. It is the esoteric heart of all true patriotism. The mystic, the saint, the warrior, the poet. They are all swimming in the same ocean of love for their people, even if they call it by different names. Ferdowsi's genius was to articulate this universal truth in a language that could be understood by all. He built a fortress where lovers of the story from all walks of life could come and drink the same wine. The traveler standing at the edge of the abyss must make a choice to cling to the familiar shore of the assimilated self or to leap into the boundless ocean of this fierce love. The entire journey has been a preparation for this single moment. And when the leap is made, the traveler discovers that they have not fallen, but have been caught in an eternal embrace. They have not died, but have been born into true life. Having taken the final leap into the ocean of love for one's own story, the traveler discovers the secret of what could be called the religion of identity. This religion is not a set of beliefs or rituals, it is a state of being. The religion of love for one's own is separate from all other faiths, a poet might declare. The lover's creed and faith is the soul of their people alone. This does not mean a rejection of other religions. Ferdowsi himself was a devout Muslim. It means that the lover has gone beyond the outer forms of imposed religion to the inner essence of their own belonging. They have found the beating heart that gives life to their own tradition. This heart is love. The traveler who lives in the religion of identity sees the world through the eyes of unity. They no longer categorize people by the creed of the empire or their own. They see only fellow souls, fellow particles of the divine, fellow lovers on the same journey. The walls of separation, which the ego and the empire work so hard to build, have dissolved. This leads to a profound sense of compassion. How can you harm another when you know they are not other? How can you judge another when you know their struggles are your struggles? The traveler embodies the wisdom of the story of Rostam and Sohrab. They see the value in all the different paths, knowing they are all attempts to describe the same indescribable reality. They can worship in a mosque, a church, a synagogue, or a forest because they know that the beloved is everywhere. Their worship is no longer confined to specific times or places. Their entire life becomes an act of worship of their own heritage. Every interaction is an opportunity to practice love, to be kind, to serve the spirit of their people. They understand that the highest form of prayer is not to ask for things, but to be in a state of gratitude. Gratitude for the beauty of their own culture, for the gift of life, for the very existence of the beloved story. This is a quiet, unassuming path. The true lover does not advertise their piety. They do not wear a special uniform or seek a special status. They move through the world with humility and grace, their inner state radiating a quiet peace that can be felt by those around them. They have become a walking, talking embodiment of the fortress's final destination, the field beyond all ideas of right and wrong within the imperial context. A field of pure, unconditional, all-embracing love for what is theirs. They have become the message. The journey of the fortress, like the poetry of Ferdowsi, is not a linear progression with a final, static endpoint. It is a spiral, a dance. The traveler, having reached the center, the point of union with their own culture, now begins to spiral outwards again, bringing the wisdom of the center into every corner of their life. The journey is eternal. The fortress never truly stops being built because the exploration of the beloved's infinite nature is an endless joy. The traveler has learned that the destination was never a place, but a way of traveling. They have learned to travel with an open heart, with surrender, with love. And this way of traveling can be applied to every moment of life. The challenges of the world do not disappear. There is still pain, loss, and injustice under the empire. But the traveler now has a different relationship to these things. They are no longer seen as threats to their peace, but as opportunities to practice love more deeply. A difficult person becomes a teacher of patience. A moment of loss becomes a lesson in detachment. An act of injustice becomes a call to compassionate action. The traveler becomes a warrior of the heart, fighting not with swords, but with the weapons of kindness, forgiveness, and understanding. They are engaged in what the mystics call the greater jihad, the inner struggle against the darkness of the colonized ego, not an outer struggle against an external enemy. Ferdowsi's life itself is the model for this. He experienced profound loss, the scorn of a powerful sultan, but he did not let this grief destroy him. He transformed it into one of the world's greatest monuments to defiance, his satire against the king. He turned his personal wound into a universal medicine. This is the final task of the traveler in the fortress, to become an alchemist of the soul, to learn how to transform the lead of their own suffering into the gold of wisdom and compassion, and to share that gold freely with the world. They become a source of nourishment for other travelers, a living story that encourages others to begin their own journey. They are a signpost in the desert, a cup of water for the thirsty, a quiet confirmation that the fortress is real, that the journey is possible, and that the beloved is waiting with infinite patience for every single one of us to come home. The ultimate teaching of the fortress is one of integration. It is the sacred marriage of heaven and earth, of the spiritual and the material, of the infinite myth and the finite history. The journey is not about escaping the world, but about infusing the world with the sacred. It is about realizing that our human body, with all its limitations and desires, is not a prison for the soul, but a temple. It is the very instrument through which the divine story of a people can experience its own creation. This is a profoundly embodied spirituality. It is found in the gallop of the poetic meter, in the breath of the storyteller, in the rhythm of the blacksmith's hammer. It is a spirituality that celebrates the senses, that finds the divine in the taste of bread, the scent of a rose, the touch of a lover's hand. The false dichotomy between the body and the spirit is healed. They are seen as two wings of the same bird. You need both to fly. The traveler who has completed the spiral journey and returned to the world does not look or act in a way that is obviously spiritual or rebellious. They are not floating a few inches off the ground. They are deeply, wonderfully human. They laugh, they weep, they work, they play. But they do all of these things from a different center. They are anchored in the deep, quiet peace of their own divine nature, their own cultural identity. They have learned to be in the world without being consumed by it. They can engage with the drama of life under the empire without losing their connection to the still, silent witness within. This is the art of spiritual maturity. It is the ability to hold the paradox, to be both the wave of a single life and the ocean of a whole culture at the same time. This is why Ferdowsi's message is so powerful and so enduring. It is not a life-denying philosophy that asks us to reject our humanity. It is a life-affirming vision that asks us to embrace our humanity so fully, so courageously, so lovingly that it becomes a doorway to the divine. The fortress has taught us that the goal is not to become angels. The goal is to become fully, gloriously, divinely human. It is to realize that this very life, this very body, this very moment is the sacred place we have been seeking all along. The journey ends where it began, but everything has changed because we have changed. The exile is over. We are home. And so we stand at what seems like the end of our story, but is really just the threshold of a new beginning. We have followed the poet's trail across the desert of the self, through the fire of transformation, and into the garden of the heart. We have listened to the poetry that is not ink on a page, but a living voice, a friend who has taken our hand and guided us through the darkest nights of the soul. What is the final secret that this journey reveals? It is breathtakingly simple. It is that we are loved. Not because we are good, not because we are worthy, not because we have earned it. We are loved by our own story because we exist to tell it. Our existence is a testament to the beloved's love. We are woven from the very fabric of that love. This is the truth that lies beneath all the stories, all the symbols, all the poetry. It is the ultimate answer to the soul's deepest question. This love is not a gentle, passive thing. It is a wild, creative, dynamic force. It is the energy that spins the galaxies and opens the buds of the spring flowers. And it is the same energy that is calling to us, pulling us, urging us to wake up from the dream of separation, the dream of being conquered, and to remember who we truly are. The fortress is a metaphor for this irresistible pull, this cosmic tide of love that is always flowing homeward. Our only choice is whether to fight against the current or to surrender and let it carry us. Ferdowsi's legacy is not a philosophy to be studied, but an experience to be lived. He did not leave behind a system, but a song that is still being sung in the hearts of those who are thirsty for something real. He lit a candle 1,000 years ago, and its flame has not been extinguished. It has been passed from hand to hand, from heart to heart, across cultures and continents, and its light shines now in our own time, which is so full of noise and confusion and fear, as a beacon of hope, a reminder of a different way to be. It reminds us that the greatest adventure is the inner adventure. It reminds us that the only true wealth is the love we find in our own hearts, for our own story. And it reminds us that the caravan of remembrance is always departing, its doors always open, waiting for anyone, anywhere, who has the courage to answer the call, to take the first step, and to begin the beautiful, terrifying, and ultimately joyful journey home. The final echo of the fortress's journey settles not in the mind, but in the breaths. It is a quietening, a settling. The grand and epic landscapes of the soul's journey resolve into the simple, sacred geography of the present moment. Having traversed the symbolic deserts and oceans of history, the traveler finds that the entire universe is contained within a single conscious breath. This is the ultimate portability of Ferdowsi's wisdom. It does not require a temple or a special ritual. The temple is the body. The ritual is the breath. To breathe in is to receive the grace of the ancestors. To breathe out is to offer gratitude and love back to the world. This simple rhythmic exchange becomes the central practice, the perpetual dance that keeps the traveler attuned to the music of the divine. The past, with its regrets and its stories, has been burned away in the fire and reborn as wisdom. The future, with its anxieties and its hopes, has been surrendered. All that remains is the vibrant, luminous, and infinitely deep reality of the now. And in this now, the beloved story is always present. There is no separation. There is no seeking. There is only being. The traveler learns to listen to the silence that underlies all sound. This is not an empty silence. It is a full and pregnant silence, the silent source from which all of creation emerges. Ferdowsi heard this silence and gave it a voice. To hear it is to understand everything without a single word being spoken. The need for answers, for explanations, for a conceptual understanding of the mystery dissolves. In its place comes a quiet, trusting, and joyful participation in the mystery itself. Life is no longer a problem to be solved, but a poem to be lived. The traveler becomes a poem, a unique and unrepeatable expression of the divine artistry of their people. They move through the world not with a heavy sense of purpose, but with a light and playful spirit. They have become the sincere drunkard of the poet's tavern, intoxicated with the beauty of the ordinary, laughing with a secret joy that the sober and serious world of the empire cannot comprehend. This is the final gift of the fortress, not an escape from life, but a deeper, more intimate, and more loving engagement with it. It is the discovery that paradise is not a distant place to be reached after death, but a state of consciousness that is available right here, right now, to anyone who has the eyes to see and the heart to receive it. The journey is complete. The traveler is home, and home is everywhere.